Like, if you're practicing democracy effectively, you should not fear the voters.
And there's lots of genuinely interesting ideas that I'm hearing from you. And as I mentioned to you before we hit record here, you don't seem to be in one of the boring ideological boxes that so many of our politicians are in right now in the United States. So, that's exciting for me.
Media. What do you make of the general state of media in general, where it seems like it's just, the short questions, cable news? I mean, just the state of our sort of paralysis and right versus left and Trump this and, the focus on sort of all the wrong things.
I did not realize how institutionalized the media companies were until running for president. And a lot of it is the format of a cable news hit, where the most time you're going to have is 5 or 6 minutes typically, and the rhythm is so abbreviated where the odds of you having any kind of genuine intellectual exchange very low, and so you just end up trotting out very similar talking points over and over again. And the interviewers are fixated on certain types of ideas and talking points, so it starts to feel very repetitive. It's one reason why we're screwed,
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to fix it.
No, it's one reason I'm grateful to be here, and I appreciate this format, because the media institutions are confused somewhat by my campaign, but they're accustomed to this very powerful gatekeeping role that is waning quite quickly.
But the top podcast audiences now are significantly larger than cable news viewership. And so certainly the Joe Rogan podcast has been seen on YouTube 3 million times alone, just on YouTube, and was seen millions of more times in audio format and others. And so podcasts truly are this new form of getting your message out to the public that have been instrumental for my campaign.
Yeah, it is the podcasting primary, as we're saying on screen. What about this MSNBC graphic kerfuffle a few days ago? I noticed some of your fans were tweeting at MSNBC saying, why is Andrew Yang not showing up on this graphic of all the other candidates? What happened here?
Yeah, and it was confusing to me because I'd been on MSNBC a number of times, and obviously NBC is hosting the debate that I'd qualified for, and I'd qualified not just yesterday, I'd qualified a while ago. So my supporters were rightfully confused, like, why are you listing literally 24 candidates and omitting a candidate that's in the top 8 or top 10 by any measurement, is already qualified for the debates? And so there was a lot of both confusion and anger on the part of my supporters, and I frankly didn't know what to tell them, because it's not like I had a line into MSNBC to tell them. It's like this was the standard they're using.
But they have
your team reached out to us, and not only did they reach out to us about being on the show, they said you could say whatever you want. We don't want any advanced questions. He has no intention. He'll stay as long as you want. This thing is as open and honest and real as it could possibly be. Is that by design of how you're running your campaign? Because that's pretty freaking rare these days.
I guess it is by design, in the sense we don't know any other way to operate. And I think there are other candidates that would have talking points and various constraints, but that's not how I've gotten to this point. That's not how I qualified for the Democratic primary debates, and we just want to keep on doing what's natural for us.
Is part of what's wrong with politics right now that people won't do this type of thing that often? It's pretty rare to just sit 2-3 feet across from somebody, look them in the eye, and try to figure out what they think?
I actually had my mind blown that this was so unusual.
The American people are really good. It's like it breaks your heart what the heck has happened to our country. But the recognition that we need to take on a new approach is growing stronger every day.
Still like this very, very deep mistrust of people that's baked into a lot of our political discussion. And so I think that's one of the points of resistance for other politicians to say that the best solution is just to put more economic resources into the hands of voters.
You've gotten, as I said to you earlier, I think you get a nice amount of coverage in the online space, and I think because you talk about ideas, and this is where there is fertile ground for that, it's working. But I've seen some of the mainstream things on you where it's like, oh, the trolls of the internet, like Andrew Yang, or the alt-right, or something like that. And it's like, I'm so in this thing that I always know when I see one of these articles. I'm like, if that's what they're saying, then it's obviously not true. But the piece that I would say is true is I think there's the sort of meme makers, the Yang Gang on Twitter and all that, they like you, and there's a reason for that. And then the media doesn't know, the mainstream media doesn't know exactly how to relate to that. They can't understand that memes could be being made of this guy who's talking about universal basic income, who isn't promising the world to everybody. So then they sort of have to make it sound like, oh, well, he must be in bed with the evil forces under the internet, or something like that.
Yeah, and I try and say, it's like, do I look like a white nationalist to anyone? It's like, you know, I mean, I'm the freaking son of immigrants, and I feel like they, you know, might not welcome me.
Yeah. Gay Jew, welcome to the party.
Yeah,
it's like, we're really doing this thing wrong, man.
Yeah, there's something is going to miss. So,
but
it's been surprising to me. The treatment in the mainstream sometimes has just been very confusing to me.
Well, because I've seen once or twice you get asked this question on mainstream things,
yes.
And it's like, and then it automatically makes you defensive, like as if you have some ownership over it. And it's like, that's just why people can't stand mainstream media, I think, at this point.
Yes, I have had that experience, and it's been sometimes difficult to answer the same question over and over again when you're just like, if you've seen any other interview with me in like a similar channel, it's like, why ask me the same question? I'm just going to say the same thing I did there.
yeah, right. We could just press play. You could just be walking around with your iPhone going, well, here's my answer to that one.
Yeah, there's like a fixation on it. And the way I think about it is that people on the internet are actual real human beings who happen to have an internet connection.
Yeah.
And distinguishing between them and other types of citizens just strikes me as bizarre.
Yeah.
It's like people on the internet equals just people.
They're just people. They're not all Russian bots?
Yeah. Well, you know, someone inventoried my social media following, and it came up like 97% human. So it's
that's got to be the best of the crew that you're involved in.
Yeah. So if you do the same exercise on other politicians' social media followings, you get much lower proportions of humans.
Something like that. You're not trying to throw anyone under the bus here.
Let's just say there are a lot of bots out there for some reason following a lot of these candidates. I got to say, this debate format is bizarre. So in an ordinary debate, you have a genuine conversation. There's going to be none of that at this debate. It's like, what it's going to be is it's going to be the moderator being like, you know, John Hickenlooper, what do you think about this? And then John Hickenlooper goes, well, actually, what I want to talk about for 60 seconds is this. And then they'll be like, so that's the actual format of the debate. And at the end of the debate, it's going to be like 30 seconds to make your case the American people go. I think that people are smart enough to know that we put money into your hands, it's good for democracy, and that the American people are smart and wise and judicious enough to put that money to use and reliably.
Yeah.
We have to lean into one of the only core competencies our government has that we can trust, and then it will let us make our own decisions. Like, this is very much about human empowerment.
Different ones. And I wish you luck, not just in your campaign, but in getting the values that underpin your campaign, this productive discourse, this fact-based discourse, just into the American conversation. So thanks for
thank you, Rob.
Like, we need to make ourselves more resilient, such that if I see an idea that I find antagonistic or offensive, that I don't think that's necessarily something that's criminal.
Our shared future.
You know what I love about you, Andrew? I love the fact that you're up here discussing solutions and not problems. You're not running on a anti-Trump campaign. You actually have ideas.
And which is really the problem right now in our country, is that we're arguing over symbols instead of solutions. And we're raising, hundreds of thousands of dollars per week and everything else, that the mainstream media will now have to reckon with this set of ideas. But I agree with you that the media response to us has been curious up to up to a certain point. And I believe in the discernment of the American people. The Americans are very smart. They can figure out what candidates are about. We need to start moving forward as a country and not search our past for ideologies or arguments from the past. I mean, we have to own the fact it's 2018. Cars and trucks are going to drive themselves in the coming years. Artificial intelligence is real. We all have supercomputers in our pockets. I mean, think about what the heck we can do with these things. And like people who are on this thing, we all take this thing for granted.
But this thing is like some Star Trek level shit.